Today we're going to carry on looking at the POE. We are moving on to activity 2, cursive. So for this activity, you need to prepare a workbook for teaching cursive to your grade 2 learners. You are required to choose one letter and include developmental worksheets in the workbook to assist your learners in writing the chosen letter in cursive. So your workbook needs to be 5 pages. So page 1 needs to be a cover page with the title. So for example, My Letter C Cursive Book. Page 2 is a preface that includes a short paragraph on why teaching cursive is in the CAPS curriculum. You need to include in-text referencing and it should be about 300 words. Page 3, you're going to include a suitable writing pattern worksheet based on your chosen letter. So you're only concentrating on one letter. Page 4 is a tactile letter that the learner will use to trace with their finger. And finally, page 5 is a progression of suitable writing lines that include a dotted tracing of the letter, a starting point dot, joining letters, and a sentence incorporating the letter chosen. You are required to submit 2 hard copies of this activity. So copy 1 is the workbook template, and then copy 2 is a completed workbook that shows what would be expected of the learner. So this is when you have to pretend you are the student and actually do the workbook as though the student was doing the workbook. Should you have to do an online submission, you would just submit copy 1, your template, as a PDF as normal, and for copy 2, you would complete it by hand and then photograph each page and include the photo of each page. Remember to include your student card in each picture as proof that it was you that completed it. For the design and creativity, there are 10 marks, and the expectation is a well-designed workbook that exceeds expectation. It shows creativity in the design going beyond the requirements of the task. This is your opportunity to be creative and channel your inner teacher. So let's have a look at page 1. So page 1 is the cover page and the title. So for example, My Letter C Cursive Book. And here are some examples. Please remember that it does not need to look like this. These are just some examples to guide you. Please be as creative and innovative as you can. Here is a very simple cover page where it has space for the student's name, and it says My Cursive Booklet with the letter C. It's a good idea to include a border on your workbook because this frames the booklet. Here is another idea where the student would write their name and it says that it's their cursive booklet for the letter chosen. So make sure that the letter that you've chosen is on the front of the workbook. Another idea is you've got a space for the name and it says My Cursive Writing, and there's actually a little rhyme that goes on the front. You can be as creative as you want to. Here's an example of an A4 one, so it doesn't have to be landscape, it can be portrait, and the students use a little colorful elephant border for the letter E for elephant. Page 2 is a preface that includes a short paragraph on why teaching cursive is in the CAPS curriculum. So it's a paragraph about the importance of teaching cursive. There needs to be in-text references and it's about 300 words. So in your workbook on page 2, you'd have a preface as your heading and you'd give your short little paragraph there. Remember to include your in-text referencing, and it is suggested that you use at least 3 reputable sources. Page 3 is writing patterns. So this is a suitable writing pattern worksheet based on your chosen letter. So to remind you that you are choosing one letter to focus this booklet on. In terms of the rubric states that includes writing patterns that are suitable to the letter chosen. These are well drawn and suitably presented on the page. Here is an example of a writing pattern. So you can think about what letter this would be good for. Here is another example of a writing pattern that would suit a specific letter. Here's an example of a more creative design where it actually looks like a little snail trail. And here's another cute design where there's a caterpillar and through the little patterns it turns into a butterfly. So you can really be as creative as you want to. Next, page 4 is a tactile letter that the learner will use to trace their finger with. So in your workbook, your template, this would be a blank letter and the children would then stick some tactile material onto this letter. In terms of the rubric, it's a good attempt at a tactile letter that shows creativity and is suitable for the intent and purpose. So here's an example. Remember to include some instructions for the student. So this is a letter L and this says that you need to stick some lace on the letter. It's a good idea to integrate your phonics here. So try and choose a tactile material that starts with that letter. Here is G, and this is put glue on the whole letter and stick grass on your letter. Once this is stuck, then children can then follow the grass pattern to make the G cursive shape. Here is another idea where first the teacher guides them to trace the letter with their finger first and then stick eggshells. A very sweet little image is also added here. I'm excited. So you really can be as creative as you want to. And finally, page 5. This is the progression of suitable writing lines. First, you have to do a dotted tracing of the letter, then a starting point dot, joining letters, and then finally a sentence incorporating the letter chosen. It's also a good idea to use a word before the sentence. And the rubric is very specific. Includes suitable progression from dotted, starting point, joining letters, and a sentence incorporating the letter chosen. And this is well presented on the page. So here are some examples of progression. And so it starts off with the dotted letter, then it's a step further. Now they can go on this line and finish it. There's a starting dot, remembering that all your cursive letters, your lowercase starts at the bottom, and there's a word cat, cat, and there's space for them to copy the word cat, and then finally a sentence, catch the clever cat. So you need to think of a sentence that incorporates the C letter, and then there's a space at the bottom for them to copy that letter. Here is another example of the progression. This is for letter E, and this has E, 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 and then egg, egg, Ella loves eggs, and a space for them to copy at the bottom. Now for copy 2, it's your chance to pretend to be the student. You need to complete the workbook as though you are the student, and this will show the marker that you are competent in cursive writing. So in terms of the rubric, the completed workbook showcases that the student has mastered the skill of cursive writing and has a good understanding of the learning outcomes. So let's have a look at a completed example. So the student would have submitted the template and now they would submit the completed workbook. So you need to fill in the front cover where they've written their name, and you can see that this student has gone the extra mile and actually added some colors into their workbook to make it a little bit more exciting. And this shows that the teacher would have guided the children to trace there and then to make a rainbow letter, which is another technique that is really good to use for handwriting. Then in terms of the patterns, you need to really try hard here. You can see the student made a mistake here, but you really need to think of redoing it should you make a mistake so that it really is perfect. tactile letter, this is colored paper that is rolled into balls. So it's very clear to see what it looks like. Then finally, the progression page, you can see that this student definitely knows how to write in cursive. It's a good idea to use different colors and make it exciting because that's what you would do with your students in your classroom. I wish you all the best for this fun cursive workbook. Remember to listen to your lecturer's advice and to do the best that you can.